Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Gravesham Borough Council's Finance and Audit Committee. I intend to go through some housekeeping matters. This meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and recorded. The recording will be uploaded to YouTube within 2 working days, where it can be accessed by everyone. Members, please use the microphone in front of you when speaking and ensure you turn the microphone off once you've finished speaking. Another member or officer will not be able to speak if your microphone is still on. Please note that the Council's visual equipment may, on some occasions, focus on or near to the public gallery area. Therefore, those in attendance at this meeting may be filmed or recorded. Attendance at this meeting signifies your agreement to this. If, as a member of the public, you do not wish to be filmed or recorded, please inform a Council staff member in attendance and we will try to assist where reasonably possible. On hearing the fire alarm, we ask all attendees to immediately evacuate the building. Please evacuate via the nearest fire exits and make your way to the community square outside of the main reception doors. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Will any, Ben?
Yes, Chair, thank you. We have apologies from Councillor Tandy and Councillor Jasal.
That's great. Thank you. The item 3 is to sign the minutes of the previous meeting. Does everyone agree they're a fair and accurate record? Great. Thank you very much. Item 4 is to declare any interest members may have in the items contained on this agenda. When declaring an interest, a member must state what their interest is. Are there any? No? Okay, thank you. Item 5 is to consider whether any items in Part A of the agenda should be considered in private or any items in Part B public. There are no items in Part B public. I don't believe any of Part A needs to be, but I'm happy to be guided by the committee. No? Okay, fantastic. So, on to the first item on the agenda, which is the Audit Findings Report 24/25. And I believe I'm handing to Paris for this one. Or Jasmine. Jasmine.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Since we recently met at the 10th of February Audit Committee, where I provided a verbal update, at this meeting we will be sharing the reports that represent the finalisation of our 24/25 audit procedures in advance of the government's backstop deadline for the 27th of February later this week. Within the report pack for the Audit Findings Report, you will see a detailed breakdown of our response to the audit procedures outlined in the plan that we reported to this committee in September 2025, broken down across our significant risks, other risks, the findings throughout the course of our audit, and then at the back of the report, you will see an Appendix D, which details the wider findings throughout the detailed level of our audit procedures as well. In summary, from our Audit Findings Report, I'd like to clarify that from the outset of our 24/25 audit, our joint aim with management was clear, that we wanted to rebuild assurance by completing sufficient work over in-year transactions and closing balances of this authority. And while the opinion would remain a disclaimer due to the lack of assurance over the prior year opening balances, the planned outcome was for significant progress to be made so that the Council could begin to move forwards from previous year's disclaimed audit. Need support throughout what has been a challenging audit cycle. The team have been constructive, engaged and committed despite competing pressures throughout the audit, and it is genuinely appreciated by myself and my team. However, in spite of these efforts, the audit has not achieved the planned outcome, and a substantial volume of the work across key audit areas has remained incomplete at the point of the statutory backstop, the 27th of February. As a result, Grant Thornton will be issuing a disclaimer of opinion on the 24/25 financial statements, and this reflects both an inherent limitation of scope and from the unaudited opening balances and the fact that significant planned audit procedures could not be concluded in time. We have also identified a significant weakness in the Council's arrangements for financial reporting and year-end close, and we'll come on to this in more detail when we come to the agenda item for the Auditor's Annual Report. Looking ahead to 25/26, there is a clear expectation that next year must show substantial improvement with a greater proportion of audit work completed in year, with a strengthening of the year-end processes, being essential for rebuilding assurance and moving away from successive disclaimers. I'm happy to take questions at this point, Chair.
Thank you, Jasmine. Any questions? Derek?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, on what page was it? Page 16 or page 10 of the PDF, under governance. Got that? It says the council must address the significant weakness in advance of preparing a 25-26 financial statements for spring 26. Failure to do so may require us to consider using our auditor's powers. Can you tell me what them powers are, and are you going to use them?
Thank you. So in terms of our auditor powers, there's a suite of powers that there are. I suppose one of them would be a statutory recommendation that's usually issued where we've issued a key recommendation and there's no sort of progress or implementation for those sorts of things. So having identified, I think sort of shared that improvement and strengthening arrangements in terms of producing the accounts and going through that process, which given that there hasn't been an audit for 4 to 5 years is somewhat understandable. I think so long as there's sort of progress and there is engagement with us and management in terms of having that, it's just to say if there is no progress and if things get worse, that's just as a firm would have to consider our auditor powers, which is just part of the work that we need to do as external auditors.
But are you considering it now?
No.
Thank you, Chair. The report seems to suggest that the finance team are either short-staffed or have a training need. Am I reading that right? Or
I suppose just zooming out slightly, these are quite complex set of accounts, and they are quite long documents. And I think the first thing to say is that I don't know if it's 4 sets of accounts in 2 years. So a lot of work has gone in to be able to get to the position we are now, and that's positive. But the reality is these are quite complex set of accounts. And since Gravesham was last audited, sort of in its full, lots of things have changed. Group accounts, the auditing standards and accounting standards have changed. So there's sort of been 5 years of incremental changes. And in this audit, we are sort of auditing it in one big bang. I think it's fair to say strengthening finance arrangements is probably across our suite of local governments. I think there's not many local government finance teams that wouldn't want a bit more capacity and sort of special. Some of these are quite specialist skills and they're in rare supply. So it is our view that actually strengthening the capacity and skills would help. And I think that's part of our recommendation, which I know management are taking forward.
On that, Sarah, do you want to comment on that as well?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be remiss of me not to, equally recognise the work that the auditors have done to try to get us in as better and best a position as we possibly can, but has been already kind of reflected by both Paris and Jasmine. We are coming off the back of 4 accounts in 18 months. We haven't been through a full audit process since 2019-20, and as Paris has already alluded to, that incremental shift in the audit requirements, is something that we've had to take in a very short period of time. And I think a combination of factors around our own resourcing challenges, some which appeared at the preparation of statement point, but some were a bit more acute during the audit process, has meant that we haven't had the capacity to do what we wanted to do. And we did absolutely have shared objectives and also service the other requirements of this council, particularly given the very challenging financial position we were in up until the settlement was released early December. So I recognise what Paris is saying, and I think hopefully when we move on to the audit findings report, perhaps we can explore some of those steps that are being put in place a little bit more, just to give the committee the assurance that we absolutely recognise the concerns that have been raised, but we are also and have responded to them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Further questions? Lee?
Yeah, so I keep thinking, sometimes listening to these reports, I'm counting how many angels are dancing around on the pin of a needle. Basically, finalisation, when do we get to finalisation? Well, I've basically got three questions there. So where do we go? At what point do we draw a line and say that this is the end? Technically, I'm wondering how many other councils are in this similar position. I would imagine from what you're saying, technically, there must be an awful large number of councils in this position. And thirdly, how do we resolve this? I mean, there must be a way forward. Is it finance? Is it reorganisation? Whatever. And that's before we even talk about what may be happening in 12 months' time and where we all may be in 12 months' time. Do we need to be worried? It's a simple question.
Thank you. I think they're all really important questions. So the first one is, when do we draw a line? And that's set out in law. So on the 27th, on Friday, basically, we have to draw an opinion. So the backstop legislation says that, come what may, an opinion must be issued on the 27th. And that draws a line under 24-25. So we'll be issuing a disclaimer of opinion on the basis we haven't been able to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence over the accounts, not least because of the opening balances issue, but because we haven't completed sufficient work in relation to closing balances and transactions in year, which is detailed within the audit findings report. So basically, the government has sort of passed legislation that means that all auditors, not just us here at Gravesham, but all local auditors have to draw a line by the 27th. So that's the first bit. The second, how many others are in this position? Around about half, I would say, are in a disclaimed audit opinion. Some of them have maybe 1 year outstanding. Some, like Gravesham, have multiple years outstanding. What I would say is about half of my portfolio is disclaimed opinions. And the experience that we've had here at Gravesham is quite similar to the others, in that if you haven't gone through that annual audit cycle for several years, you see that in the level of things that are found and how tricky it is to get through that annual cycle. So I'll say the experience here is similar to my other disclaimed opinions where it's multiple years. And that goes to the third question, which is, where do we go from here? So what we've done as part of our audit is, where we've found maybe there's an issue here, or we're not getting the information we need, we've done our best to be helpful to raise these control recommendations for this committee to be aware of, but also for management to go away and say, well, how can we improve? So where we've done bits of work and we think, well, the evidence isn't quite where we need it to be, we've raised that as a control finding within the audit findings report, which then gives a sort of a basis for management to take that away to make those improvements. And that's part of the suite of regaining assurance. The first step really is to, can we get through an in-year? So for say 25-26, is it possible for us to audit all of closing balances and transactions in year? That has to be the first aim. That will still result in a disclaimer because we still don't have assurance over opening balances. How we regain assurance over opening balances, that there is some guidance that has been set out as to sort of work that the auditor can do. But it's important for us to do that first step. So before we sort of launch into sort of trying to regain assurance over, say, the years that haven't been audited, I think it's most important to audit the in-year, sort of the closing balances and in-year, not least because when sort of local government reorganisation, those sorts of things, the really key questions is, is there assurance over the assets, the liabilities of the council? And I suppose that's the key part, is making sure that we've got assurance over those closing balances. We did some good work this year, and some key areas of interest, say MRP and all of those sorts of things, that we did do some good work on. For next year, I suppose what we're hoping for is we can do more, and we're going to work with management to support them. And part of that support was raising those control recommendations. I think there's sort of 19 control recommendations in the audit findings report, which sort of sets out the things. If those are implemented, next year would be better. So hopefully I can't remember if those were all your questions, but those were the three that I remember.
Yep.
And just come back slightly. That is helpful. I'm just wondering about 27th of February. I mean, I'm quite happy to take myself into my cellar, where I have very well stocked, and I've put the hatch down and hide away for the next year or so. Well, year. How confident would I be that when I came out in a year's time, that I wouldn't be having a similar discussion with you? Can will these matters be resolved to your satisfaction in 12 months?
I'll probably ask Sarah to answer that one. I'm just thinking the management response to your recommendations is probably worth Sarah just highlights.
Sorry, Chair, you're right.
Absolutely fine. Thank you. Through you, Chair. So you'll have seen from the report that we have taken on board all 19 recommendations. We've already started speaking about how we can respond to them, mindful of the fact that in 4 weeks' time, we will be at close down again. So we need to move swiftly, certainly on some of the recommendations, to make sure we can respond positively to them. We will always reserve our right to review the recommendation, review the recommendation, review the arrangements we have in place, and take a view on what we think is required. And as management, I reserve my right to do that. But we will be making sure that we are keeping in touch with the auditors and being clear with them on how we are responding to the auditor recommendations. And if there is a deviation from what is being recommended, we will have the conversation as to why, and we will have a conversation about that and a discussion about that. And I think that is the positive thing we've got about this professional relationship we have with the auditors now, is that we can have those conversations up front. So I genuinely do not want to be in a position where, in this time next year or earlier, you're seeing 19 recommendations, which is effectively indicating that we've done nothing, because I would not be doing my job if that was the case, and I'm sure it's not what the team will want either. Please let me assure you that we are taking these recommendations seriously, and we certainly will be making sure that we implement them where we feel there is a control weakness that we do need to respond to, and we've got the things that we need to do that.
Cool. I think John Parrish will come back.
Yeah, so I think it's important to note, so 24-25 was Gravesham's first year of a full audit having been disclaimed. For most authorities, that happened, the first one was 23-24. So the experience I'm going through right now are audits that had sort of previously been disclaimed and had that sort of big bang say, here are all the issues that we've found. Some authorities have responded to that well. They haven't got 100%. And I think we have to be somewhat realistic about what progress can be made in the period of time that we've got now. And we certainly are realistic. Certain improvement recommendations need to be prioritized depending on how important they are. And that's absolutely right and proper for management to look at that. I suppose as the external auditor, what we are keen to see is progress. And I think it's that trajectory of progress which is really key to our sort of overall assessment, rather than being sort of a blanket, are all 19 implemented? Have we got to 100%? Because I think we have to be realistic. It's unlikely, based on the experience that I've got, that it goes from this to being 100% everything's fine. So I just want to just temper slightly expectations, but this committee should challenge and support progress alongside us.
Thank you. Derek?
Yes, Paris, you said that going forward we're going to have to do more what we've done before. Is there some sort of timeline? You know, I mean, it has to be a bit flexible, but is there a timeline where our finance team or you see it's not going right, or we're on schedule? Is there that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we come to this committee every quarter and we are honest with this committee about the work that we're doing. So we'll bring the audit plan, we'll do progress updates, and we'll give you a feel for how things are going. And, you know, that is the case. So there'll be various touch points throughout the year for us to touch on progress. And it's also for this committee as to how you wish to be assured that progress is happening, both from our side, but also from management. What I would say is the challenge doesn't get easier. So as we talked about the sort of the government backstop deadlines, at the moment it is the 27th of February. Next year it moves to January, and the year after that it's November. So where are we now? There's no possibility for me to sit here next year at this time with an audit findings report. It has to be a month earlier. So despite the challenges here at Gravesham, the ask is becoming even more, and that is from government. And what we are working with all of our clients next year is to say we want to use next year as a dry run, to say we want to get it all done by November. That's the ambition. That's going to be tricky, and it's going to take a lot of work from us, but also our clients. So it's just to say that you're right, but the goalposts are slightly moving for next year, and they will move again for the year afterwards. So standing still is also probably going backwards.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I think management have accepted the recommendations in full. I just wondered if you wouldn't mind reflecting a little bit on, I guess, what have the Grant Thornton team learned over the last sort of few months of period of this audit? And what would you do differently? What lessons have you learned? I mean, I think obviously management have accepted there's some things too. Is there anything that sort of the Grant Thornton team would have done differently had they had their chance again? Obviously, because the chance again is coming up pretty soon.
Happy to take that one, Chair. I think over the period of the audit, there were certainly some things that we started to feature almost as best practice, but we felt that we could strengthen for next year, including maintaining a more informal sort of recommendations log around if your working paper had this in this as well, we'd have it all in one working paper, that kind of thing. So there's things that we can do to make things easier for the finance team perhaps, and to help them consolidate their working papers for us going forwards. There was things that worked really well, us being on site here at the Civic Centre frequently. We definitely want to build that into next year. And then in terms of improvements, I think we could seek to bring in more members of the finance team to our regular query meetings as well, to get engagement from not just a small number of individuals in the finance team, but to get full engagement across the team as to sort of where samples and things are. As you'll see in sort of Appendix D, there's quite a number to get through. So I'm sure a problem shared is a problem halved across the finance team if we can get that message out there. Yeah, those are a few ideas, but.
Lovely, thank you. And then coming to the document, back on page 9, where you said due to time constraints ahead of the backstop deadline, you couldn't verify if management had been able to adjust the misstatements as explained in the report. Would you mind commenting on that, or should I have to hand to management? Because obviously there's been action since the report was issued.
I'm happy to clarify on that one. So at the current date, I believe we're on version 5 of the accounts, perhaps. So you may recall, once we received the accounts in July 2025, myself and Paris reviewed those accounts and shared a number of comments with management to reflect as amendments throughout those accounts. And we were expecting a revised setback in time for our fieldwork window to commence. So that would have been October 2025. And we reflected on that in our progress reporting. However, we didn't receive that second set of the accounts until December 2025. And when we reviewed the responses back, there were a number of sort of follow-up questions and suggestions about the amendments made. That continued into July 2026. And at the point in which the report was finalised, we were yet to conclude whether the misstatements had been addressed in full in some regards. So it's more just a caveat statement.
Thank you. And Sarah, do you want to comment on that point?
Yeah, I mean, certainly from our point of view, the statement of accounts that's presented as the agenda tonight is what we feel is a robust and true and fair view of the authority's financial position at the end of the financial year, and we will take on board, the comments that have been made throughout the report and build those into our preparations for 26-27. Sorry, 25-26. No, 25-26. Sorry, we had budget setting last night, didn't we? I'm in 2 years. Thank you. Apologies.
Thank you both. And on page 13, in the closing, which is I think our leases, which has been our favourite topic for the last year or so, it references unresolved judgments, particularly in relation to GBC lettings that need to be addressed. Would you mind just expanding a little bit on what that means, please?
Happy to clarify, Chair. So this is featured on our headlines because this is a new accounting standard implemented. And like you say, we've discussed this one a few times. But as we'd raised, this is a significant risk. It also features later on in section 4 of our report as well, clarifying the procedures we were able to perform in line with our plan and the procedures where we weren't able to regain assurance. And the commentary there on that headline page and also in section 4 reflects our inability to gain the planned assurance on the leases in respect of GBC lettings. So we had done some work with management to understand the GBC lettings relationship with the council as a leaseor and as a leasee. And there is an outstanding judgment that is with management to determine whether the leases themselves are short term, i.e. less than 12 months or longer than 12 months, which that judgment is really key for whether the assets that are under the GBC lettings programme are in the scope of being a right of use asset under IFRS 16 or whether they fall outside the scope. So once we've received that judgment, we can then take forward with management sort of the procedures required for that section, but it's just pending that response.
Thank you. Is there anything you wanted to in management say now? Are you happy? Okay, great. Thank you. Any further questions on item 6? No. Okay. Well, that was for noting. So we'll move on to the auditor's annual report for 24-25, which again is for noting. And I'm handing to Paris for this one.
Yeah, it should be very quick, this one. So we took the indicative version of this report in November. The report in front of you is the final version, and it is only updated for the completion of our audit, which we've already discussed, and effectively captures our recommendation to strengthen arrangements around producing the accounts and going through the audit process. I think it's important to note that 3 or 4 months is a long time in local government, and certainly things around finances have changed quite dramatically between November and February, and I think we are aware of that, but the auditor's annual report is primarily a backwards looking document, and we've explained to management that we will sort of revisit our piece in terms of the financial sustainability in 25-26, judging by the budget yesterday. There's a strong positive outlook in terms of potentially that key recommendation, which has been in the auditor's annual report for maybe 3 or 4 years, coming away. Obviously, I can't preempt the actual work, but we'll be doing that work in the summer to look to report in November. So just some of those things might be slightly dated, but we wasn't planning to reopen that and do lots more work on that. Happy to take any questions.
Lovely, thank you. Any questions? I just have one actually. Page 11, IR1, and apologies, this may be more of a question for management than the auditors. This is around the capital projects. I think we've talked about capital projects in both the sort of the outturn reports as well as through some of the audit papers as well. Just to sort of clarify for members, where or what committees will the scrutiny of these risks and the governance and the controls and the sort of capital slippage feature at?
So yeah, through you, Chair. So you'll also note from the recommendations that we are looking at our scrutiny functions at the moment. We are considering how this recommendation can feature within those arrangements, and I'm sure more will come forward imminently on that once that's been discussed further with the leader.
Lovely, thank you. It's good to hear. Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you again. That was for noting. The next item is item 8, which is the actual statement of accounts. This is actually sort of has an approval attached to it, an agreement that I can sign the statement of accounts and the letter of representation. So I believe I'm handing to Sarah for this one, probably introduce and highlight any areas that we haven't already discussed.
Yeah, I can certainly keep this quite brief because you've done the introduction for me, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, so this report, agenda item 8, is really building on the reports that the committee have considered previously this evening, and is looking to present the statement of accounts for 24-25 for agreement, and for any final changes that are required or is required in the hopefully short window between tonight and receiving the audit opinion, should there be anything required, that being delegated to the chair, obviously working with myself. But more importantly, and again as part of those audit closure procedures, looking at the letter of representation at Appendix 2, and for the committee to agree that that can be signed on behalf of the committee by the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any sort of questions or comments? Is everyone happy to agree that they can be signed? Yep, lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, whizzing through. Item 9 is the review of accounting policies, which is again for us to endorse. And I'm passing to Alex this one, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual update on the accounting policies on which the 25-26 final accounts will be prepared. Although it's not a statutory requirement, CIPFA recommends that it's good practice for authorities to take their accounting policies through the relevant committee, and therefore in accordance with this and for proper practice adopted at Gravesham in previous years, we're now bringing this report to you now. As is common practice, key officers from the Council's finance team attend external training sessions and review the Council's policies to ensure the requirements of CIPFA's accounting code are being followed. There have been limited changes to the 25-26 Code of Practice, and therefore the accounting policies remain largely the same as previously reported. But as mentioned in the covering report, there is now a requirement for all local authorities to provide an indexation to property, plant and equipment assets which have not been subject to a formal revaluation in any accounting period. Where the impact of indexation calculations is deemed immaterial, the asset value will not be adjusted in the accounts. Therefore, at section 1.7 of the accounting policies on property, plant and equipment, this has been updated to reflect this new requirement. Other minor amendments have been made where further clarification was recommended during the 24-25 external audit process. The accounting policies have been shared with Grant Thornton, and any significant changes resulting from their review and subsequent correspondence within the finance team will be reported to members in due course. So in summary, members are asked to endorse the accounting policies to be used for the 25-26 statement of accounts, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alex. Any questions? I just have one actually, just for probably my benefit. I guess what's the sort of value volume of assets that are actually in scope for that policy in this? Is it material?
So in terms of the indexation, yes, so our property, plant and equipment's quite a substantial value on our balance sheets, over 500 million. So yeah, it could have quite a significant impact. I was actually at a CIPFA event today and spent 3 hours on indexation, so we know all about it now.
That's lovely, thank you. It sounds wonderful. Okay, are there any further questions? No, okay, we're happy to endorse these accounting policies. Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, the next item is item 10, which again is the CIPFA code evaluation or self-assessment, which we're being asked to note. So I'm handing to Sarah for this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this is a report that we bring to the committee at this time every year, just to kind of do a self-check on the arrangements we have in place as they appear against SIPFA Financial Management Code. You'll note from the table, which is showing on the top of page 37 this year, that we have flagged one red recommendation. That's in relation to topics we've already discussed this evening about the capacity and resilience of the finance team. And that's certainly something that, as we've already discussed, is a key focus both now and going through the final accounts process. And hopefully at this point next year, that assessment will be a more positive one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm conscious we probably did speak quite a lot on that one red item earlier, but happy to take any further questions if anyone has them. No? Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next item is item 11, which is the internal audit charter review, which I'm handing to James for, which is for us to approve.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as noted in the covering report, we are required to conduct a regular review of our internal audit charter. Members will recall that we completed a major overhaul last year to meet the requirements of the new global internal audit standards. Accordingly, we're not proposing any changes to the charter following this annual review, and we're seeking members' approval to continue with the existing charter that was originally approved in 2025. I'm happy to take any questions that members may have, though.
Thank you. Any questions? I think it all sounds quite sensible. Happy to? Okay, thank you. Happy to approve. The next item is item 12, which is the internal audit plan. So again, James.
Thank you. Yes, so we are required to prepare an audit plan outlining how the internal audit resource will be used. The risk assessment to inform the plan for 26-27 was completed after consultation with wider management team to gain the views of managers on what they considered to be the risks to their services in the coming year, and the plan shows links to the corporate risk register to demonstrate that the audit resource is targeted to the highest areas of risk for the authority. While we've mapped out the entire year for administrative purposes, the plan presented at Appendix 2 only covers the first 6 months of the year and mainly incorporates the reviews of the highest score in our independent assessment, although we have tried to take into account demands on services to ensure that we're not conducting a review at a completely inappropriate time, such as while finance are dealing with final accounts. We will be reviewing our risk assessment in July to reflect any changes in risk priorities and prepare the plan for the second half of the financial year, which will be presented alongside the first update report in September. So I'm now seeking the committee's approval for the proposed plan for Q1-2, and I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Cool. Thank you, James. Any questions? I just have one, if that's okay, James. On page 5, item 4, which is the review arrangements to ensure compliance with the SIPFA Solace Delivering Good Governance in Local Government Framework and 2025 Addendum. Could you put that into plain English for us and tell us what it is, please?
Yeah, so the SIPFA framework is essentially what outlines what we should have in our localised code as part of our annual governance statement. So there have been some changes to that as noted by that 2025 addendum. So what we'll be doing is looking at making sure that those changes have been incorporated into the process preparing the next annual governance statement.
Lovely, thank you. Any further questions? We're happy to approve? Yep. Lovely, thank you very much. And then lastly, item 13, which is the counter fraud plan. Again, James.
So as always, the counter fraud plan for 26-27 outlines how we intend to use the counter fraud resource over the next 12 months, clearly outlining the work that we will be undertaking in the key areas. As always, we do not outline specifics due to the reactive nature of a lot of our work and the sensitivity of some of that activity, but we will be determining the proactive work that we aim to complete during this year as part of our team meetings, using our fraud risk assessments as a guide for that. As I say, it's quite a high level plan because we can't go into all the detail in the public domain, but I'm happy to take any questions that members may have.
Lovely, thank you. Is there any further questions? No. Okay, we were happy to approve. Yeah, thank you very much. So you have your approval, James. Right, the next item is item 14, which is any other business. I haven't been made aware in advance, but happy if there's any from the floor. No? Okay, the last item is item 5, which is to do with Part B, which we don't have. So at 10 minutes past 8, I'll call the meeting to a close. Thank you, everyone.